Hey everybody, and Tony here with my review of Mozart's Così fan tutte, which I saw at the Hochschule für Musik Hanns Eisler Berlin. The conductor was Peter Meise. The assistant conductors were Ming Kim and Yu Min Woo. The production was done by Sophia Gereb. The assistant director was Kundri Rimon. The sets were done by Zoe Leutnant and Magdalena Weber. The costumes were done by Linda Tiebel, Emma Pohle, Margarita Roshkova, and Nuria Delario, and the lights were handled by Mako Philip and Hanna Vandel. Before I start my review of Mozart's Così fan tutte at the Hochschule für Musik Hanns Eisler Berlin, I want to thank one of the violinists, Emmanuel Jean Villarin, aka EJ, for providing me with a free ticket to see this particular performance. So EJ, if you're watching this video, thank you so much for the free ticket. I definitely enjoyed my time there, and I hope you enjoy watching my review of Mozart's Così fan tutte at the Hochschule für Musik Hanns Eisler Berlin. With that said, let's get on to the review, starting off with my thoughts on the production and costumes. Overall, I thought it was quite adorable, even though I am not a huge fan of modern minimalistic productions of my personal favorite operas. Yes, I do qualify Mozart's Così fan tutte as one of my favorite operas because I do enjoy the music. I do enjoy how challenging it can be for certain characters, especially with the likes of Fiordiligi, Dorabella, Guglielmo, Ferrando, and even Despina and Don Alfonso are concerned. And even though the plot is quite typical of Commedia dell'arte, it's still a lot of fun listening to the music. So I did come into this production with a fair amount of skepticism, but after I watched it as a whole, I still kind of enjoyed it. It's not really the greatest thing I've ever seen. Yes, a lot of the pomp and the elegance was stripped down and transported all the action from 18th century Ferrara, Italy to a replication of what looks like to be the Bronx or the Lower East Side of New York City, especially since the action opens with Guglielmo and Ferrando all in hobo attire and drinking beer bottles, and Don Alfonso coming in with snazzier attire, as well as having both Fiordiligi and Dorabella wear costumes of today, and having Despina dressed in what sort of has to look like gangster attire, let alone someone who was an army brat. And there were also occasions in which the characters threw around all of these styrofoam cubes, not only at each other, but also on different parts of the stage. And they also serve as cushions whenever somebody falls or whenever somebody throws whatever prop they have in their hands. So even though I'm not a huge fan of this production, I still appreciate the craftsmanship that went behind it. I still appreciate the effort that the likes of Zoe Leutnant and Magdalena Weber managed to accomplish, unless they forget about Sofia Gereb and Kundri Rimon and everybody in charge of the costumes. I definitely did appreciate the craftsmanship that was accomplished, although I'm very sure that they could all use their talents in newer operas and even more minimalistic theater, and not just something that is traditional like Così fan tutte. At least the lighting was well balanced and was appropriately bright in certain moments. And now we get to the singers, starting off with Louisa Günther as Fiordiligi. I do appreciate that pliability, flexibility, agility, and overall silvery quality that I love in her voice as Fiordiligi. She was also able to climb the high notes with ease and without much effort, and do so with grace and elegance. She also looked elegant and girlish on stage, especially when it's complemented by her fine and silvery light lyric soprano voice. While I do appreciate that silvery quality in her light lyric soprano voice, there are some reservations I have about her vocal performance. First of all, I was not crazy about the lack of coordinated chest tones, because when she sang her low notes, they had the tendency to sound inaudible. However, she did get better in the second half of the opera, where her chest tones were a little bit fuller, but they still need a lot of work. And she had the tendency to sound very unclear in the lower parts of her voice, when she should actually sound clear in both the lower and upper parts of her voice. Therefore, if she is to sound clearer, if she is to sound a lot more well projected when she sings, she has to coordinate head voice and chest voice, and do so in the way that she ensures a lot more vocal security and a lot more audibility in everything that she sings, both the lows and the highs. Whenever I think of true light lyric, full lyric, let alone coloratura sopranos who sang Fiordiligi with clarity and beauty and an overall great technique, I would usually consult sopranos such as Berta Curina Lawyer, Felicia Huni Mihaszak, Christina Dötekom, Melita Museli, Annelisa Rothenberger, Irmgard Seefried, Lisa de la Casa, Leontine Price during the 1950s and 1960s, Margaret Price, and Margaret Marshall. Those sopranos actually had clearer voices on their best days, especially with the likes of Annelisa Rothenberger, Melita Museli, Margaret Price, and Margaret Marshall are concerned. Whether they sing the chest tones or the top notes, they were clear all around. That is not to trivialize the fine talent that Louisa Günther had. She still had sufficient agility and flexibility to own the role of Fiordiligi. It's just that she needs to keep on developing her coordinated chest tones, keep on developing her core, and make sure that she sings with a lot more clarity in future performances as Fiordiligi, let alone any of the roles in the lyric soprano repertoire, because there is a wonderful future for this young lyric soprano, and I do not want to hear her voice being squandered not only by poor choices, but by poor technique. She just needs to keep on polishing her technique so that she could reach her maximum potential. There's no doubt that I do enjoy the creamy tone that Ying H had to offer as Dorabella. She absolutely looked and sounded lovely on stage. She was able to give the role a lot of charisma, charm, spunk, and sass, and it all reflects on how she was able to sing the entirety of Dorabella's role. However, the more I listen to her voice more critically, the more I think to myself, she sounds more like a soprano disguising herself as a mezzo. More specifically, a full lyric soprano disguising herself as a lyric mezzo, which is no surprise because the role of Dorabella was actually written and performed by sopranos, and you had the likes of Lisa de la Casa and Sena Jurinats performing the role, although both of them were more well known as Fiordiligi, Wanda Axel Clemens, Consuelo Rubio, Marie McClellan, and Rose Mannion. Whether they be full lyric sopranos or to some extent Falcon sopranos in Consuelo Rubio's case, or even actual Falcon sopranos like Giulietta Signonato, those sopranos and high mezzos had way more coordinated voices and even coordinated chest tones to make the role of Dorabella their own. There were occasions in which Ying H lacked coordinated chest tones, and there were times that she sounded rather collapsed in her head voice. And I would really love for her to continue developing her core, developing her coordinated chest tones, and sing with a lot more clarity, because I don't necessarily hear a mezzo-soprano in Ying H's voice. I actually hear more of a full lyric soprano, more capable of singing roles like Desdemona from Otello, Alice Ford from Falstaff, Eva Pogna from Die Meistersinger from Nuremberg, Elsa from Lohengrin, Suor Angelica, Liu, Countess Almaviva, and Donna Elvira. And maybe in 10 years' time, the roles of Valentine from Les Huguenots and Rachel from La Juive. If Ying He continues to develop her technique in the right way and make sure that she sings with a lot more clarity and coordination, as well as coordinated chest voice, then I'm confident that Miss He could be able to sing a lot more full lyric soprano roles and actually blossom into more of a full lyric soprano instead of a short soprano disguising herself as a mezzo. The possibilities for Miss Hay are endless. It's just that she also needs to find the right voice teacher to make sure that she goes in the right direction, as well as have good vocal coaches to ensure that her vocal resources are well preserved. Maria Hayes Vidal was able to steal the show theatrically as Despina. I say theatrically because she was totally involved as a stage actress. She had a lot of charisma, charm, and spunk to the role, and she was able to enjoy the living heck out of this role with everything she's got. She managed to steal the show from nearly everybody's feet, and vocally speaking, she's quite reminiscent of Madame Mesplé in terms of her timbre, that light and high timbre that is quite silvery and very appropriate for all of these delicious coloratura soubrette roles. The fact that she almost sounded like Madame Mesplé might be a compliment in terms of how she was able to portray the lightness of voice and that overall sweet spunkiness that made her performance of Despina quite the standout. But it also hampered her performance because she had the tendency to let out some caprinos, as well as lacking that coordinated chest voice, which is just as necessary for any true coloratura soprano. It also says something when the likes of Adela Kern and Irene Eisinger and Lotte Schöne had way more coordinated chest tones, and they mainly sang a lot of the roles in the coloratura soubrette all the way up to the lyric coloratura soprano repertoires, especially when it comes to Lotte Schöne, who not only remained in the lyric coloratura soprano roles, but also ventured into the more lyrical repertoire. And I dare not forget about the legendary light lyric soprano who was Elisabeth Schumann, who not only boasted quite a wide repertoire, ranging from Despina all the way up to Micaela, but she also had a superb technique that managed to keep her voice in great shape. With Maria Hayes Vidal, yes, I still enjoy that lightness and silveriness and sweetness, as well as that high singing quality to be found in her coloratura soubrette soprano voice. However, she just needs to keep on growing her instrument by further developing her core and developing those coordinated chest tones, because that will make her sound a lot more complete and will also keep her away from singing too high in the larynx when she could actually also sing more in the pharynx to also ensure complete vocal presence. And there's still a great future for Miss Maria Hayes Vidal in a lot of these lovely light lyric soprano roles, especially when it comes to light lyric soprano roles who could also pass as soubrette roles. But she still needs to develop her technique in the right way and also make sure that she acquires total vocal completeness by coordinating chest voice and head voice well. Among both the male singers and everybody tonight, it was none other than Kang Yoon Shine Lee who stole the show as Ferrando, all thanks to his naturally beautiful, free-sounding, and absolutely gorgeous. Light lyric tenor voice, and if you also know his type of voice in the Italian way, he is definitely a fine tenore di grazia, and a vocally pliable one at that. The fact that he was able to sing in such a covered manner in terms of coordinating chest voice and head voice in the high notes and in the low notes made him a complete vocal actor all the way through. He was also sufficiently charismatic and charming in the role, and that charm was only boosted by his superb vocal performance as Ferrando. While I do admire Kang Yoon-shine Lee's vocal performance as Ferrando, all thanks to that wonderful technique of his, he could actually be a lot more charismatic. He could be a lot more vocally colorful and implement way more covered chest tones when singing not only Ferrando, but the light lyric slash tenore leggero repertoire. Because who I have in my ears when it comes to complete singing, as well as using covered chest from bottom to top, are the likes of Colomon von Pataki, Richard Tauber, Harold Nash, Cesare Valetti, Alfredo Kraus, and Jerry Hadley. These tenors mastered Ferrando's wonderful music with everything that they've got and completely phenomenal techniques that managed to demonstrate how well they could sing from top to bottom. With Kang Yoon-shine Lee, yes, he did have a fine technique that he managed to exercise with everything he's got, and he was able to sing the role well to the point where he not only excelled in the role, but also stole the show from everybody's feet. But his voice could benefit from a lot more color, from a lot more charisma, and from a lot more covered chest tones that can help him grow in dimension, grow in interpretation, and grow in multifacetedness, because Kang Yoon-shine Lee is a tenor whose career is ever flourishing and whose vocal promise is, to not make this a pun, shining all the way through because of the promise that he has, because of the potential that he has to keep on growing. He just needs to work on his technique in the best way possible and ensure that his voice stays within the light lyric tenor repertoire and not stretch his limits, because that is a fine and delicate light lyric slash tenore di grazia voice that I love in Kang Yoon-shine Lee, and he did superbly as Ferrando. Rory Green was sufficiently handsome as an actor as Guglielmo, and I do enjoy that dark timbre that he possessed as a baritone. However, his main issue was that he was throaty and that there was just something stuck in his voice that prevented him from singing clearly and cleanly. That throaty quality did pretty much hamper whatever vocal beauty he had to produce, but in his best moments, he can sing rather well and use those low notes, let alone chest tones, to his advantage. The only way he can improve as a vocalist is that he should be able to sing in a covered manner and make sure that he covers his chest tones well from bottom to top, and just get rid of that throatiness by making sure that he sings pharyngally and not too much in the mask. Because once Rory Green masters true pharyngeal singing, the sky is definitely the limit for him. While he does have that fine and handsome stage presence, he just needs to keep on developing his technique and sing way more pharyngally so that he could prevent any signs of throaty singing. Yu Dong-wei does have that sneering arrogance, dapper elegance, and overall handsome charisma that made his portrayal of Don Alfonso an absolute joy to watch from beginning to end. I can never go wrong with how Mr. Wei embodied Don Alfonso and his slickness, and how he was able to make him such an opportunistic and delightfully slimy curmudgeon who still has a lot of charisma to offer from beginning to end. His vocal resources, though, do leave a bit to be desired because he doesn't really have the sufficient depth to make the role of Don Alfonso come alive. Because whenever I think of Don Alfonso, I would usually think of bass baritones and basso buffos who sang this particular role, such as Paul Schöffler, Fritz Ollendorf, Fernando Correnna, and Paolo Montarsolo. Those were real bassos who specialized in the buffo repertoire, who were able to give that sneering, cynical quality helped by those cavernous chest tones and make him come to life as a character. And even with the nobility found in Paul Schöffler, he was also able to make Don Alfonso a dashing gentleman who could be able to pull the strings when he wants to. The reservations I had with Yu Tongwei's voice as Don Alfonso was that he sounded way lighter than Rory Green as Guglielmo. In fact, he kind of sounded a lot more like a high cavalier baritone singing this otherwise deep role. And he would be way more accustomed to singing Valentin from Gounod's Faust, Mercutio from Gounod's Romeo et Juliette, Harlequin from Richard Strauss's Ariadne auf Naxos, and Papageno from Mozart's Die Zauberflöte. Those type of lyric baritone roles are a lot more appropriate for Yu Tongwei because his lyric baritone voice was not deep enough to make a striking impression as Don Alfonso, and there were occasions where he didn't have the low notes to make this character come alive. Nevertheless, Yu Tongwei was theatrically charismatic and quite vocally charming as Don Alfonso, even when his vocal flaws were present. So overall, the singing definitely showed promise. And the most promising singer out of everybody was Kang Yoon Shine Lee, who was able to give a vocally stirring performance as Ferrando. While he could benefit with a lot more color, charisma, and covered chest tones, he was still able to prove himself as an exceptionally wonderful musician, as well as a stylistically fine gentleman with a lot to give to the world of opera. The other singers were also serviceable, but with some reservations. Louisa Günther's silvery Fiordiligi does need to amp up her chest tones. Ying H's charismatic Dorabella does also need to make sure that head voice and chest voice are coordinated. Maria Hayes Vidal's sparkling Despina does also need to develop her chest tones and head voice a lot more. Rory Green's handsome Guglielmo must get rid of that throatiness and make sure that he commits himself to proper covered chest singing, complete with girare from the middle notes, the high notes, as well as from the low notes, the middle notes. And Yu Tongwei's charismatic Don Alfonso was kind of hampered by his natural lyric baritone voice being a tad bit too light for this old philosopher. Nevertheless, everybody managed to do what they had to do as performers, and when it came to everybody involved, Kang Yoon Shine Lee managed to carry everybody from head to toe, all thanks to his peerless musicianship. The conducting initially done by Peter Maisa in the first half of the opera, and then in the second half of the opera by Min Jong Kim, managed to be quite brisk, crisp, and really involving to listen to. Yes, there were moments in which both conductors had the tendency to conduct a little bit too fast, especially where Ferrando's solo aria Un'aura amorosa was concerned. It was a bit too fast for my liking, and I would have loved to have a little bit more time taken and a little bit more lento in that particular aria, because this is a gentleman who is so enamored and who just wants to win over the girl that he loves. At least the entire conducting was quite energetic, and the orchestra of the Hochschule für Musik Hanns Eisler Berlin managed to keep everything going and also made sure that they keep following the conductor's directions. So overall, with an overly minimalistic student production that was quite cute to watch, backed up by some singers that show a lot of potential, with Kang Yoon Shine Lee being the gold medal standard compared to everybody else tonight, and some decent conducting done by Peita Maisa and Min Jong Kim, this was quite a nice evening for opera. And I do wish all the singers a lot of great fortune to come, as well as all the best in their careers, because even though the world of opera might be very competitive, I'm sure that if they are all able to develop their techniques in the best way possible, they can make it and they can prove themselves to be the fine singers that they want to be. And for those of you who caught this production of Mozart's Così fan tutte at the Hochschule für Musik Hanns Eisler Berlin, what'd you think of it? Did you enjoy all the singers? Was there a singer that stood out to you so much? Did you also find the production quite interesting to look at? Or was everything not to your liking? Please comment below and let me know. Well, that's it for my review of Mozart's Così fan tutte at the Hochschule für Musik Hanns Eisler Berlin. Tune in tomorrow for my review of Mozart's Idomeneo, starring Saimir Pirgo in the title role at the Staatsoper unter den Linden. So until then, good night everybody.